You are holding the most advanced sleep destruction device ever built. It fits in your pocket, it cost you around $1,000, and the same company that sold it to you also sells an app to track how badly you're sleeping because of it. That is not a coincidence. That is a business model. Here is the problem in plain numbers. The average American adult spends just over 7 hours a day looking at screens as of 2024, and Gen Z averages 9 hours. Some teenagers are logging more than 8 hours daily, and sleep researchers are watching in real time as the population's ability to reach genuine rest deteriorates across every measurable metric. The people selling you the screens are also selling you the sleep tracking, and the people selling you the sleep tracking are also selling you the blue light glasses, which, as of 2025, have inconsistent evidence behind them in a meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Neurology. You could spend hundreds of dollars across 3 separate product categories and still not fix the original problem. Because the original problem is still sitting on your bedside table, charging overnight. This is not a story about willpower, and it is not a story about putting your phone down earlier. What it is a story about what screens are doing to a specific biological system inside your brain, why that system took hundreds of millions of years to develop, and why it is now losing a fight it was never designed to have. Start with what is actually breaking. Deep inside your brain, positioned directly behind your eyes, sits a cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Most people have never heard of it, and most people have also never considered that the most important clock they will ever own runs not on batteries, but on light. Every morning, light enters your eyes, reaches a specialized set of retinal cells containing a protein called melanopsin, and those cells fire a signal directly to the SCN, which then coordinates every biological rhythm in your body: when to release cortisol, when to lower your core temperature, when to begin producing melatonin. The SCN is the conductor. Melatonin is what it sends out when it decides the day is finished. And for almost all of human history, the signal to begin that process was simple and reliable. The sun went down, blue wavelength light disappeared from the environment, and the brain began preparing for sleep. Modern LED screens emit light at precisely the wavelengths, approximately 460 to 480 nanometers, that your melanopsin cells are most sensitive to. Looking at a phone, a laptop, or a television in the evening sends your SCN the same signal it would receive from the midday sun. Not a similar signal, the same one. Your brain does not know you are watching something at 10 p.m. It registers that it is noon and responds accordingly by keeping you alert. And that is where the consequences stop being subtle. A review published in Chronobiology and Medicine in March 2024 found that 2 hours of LED tablet exposure produces a 55% drop in melatonin levels compared to reading a printed book under low light, with melatonin onset delayed by an average of 1.5 hours. That is not a minor adjustment to your evening. That is your brain being told, systematically and repeatedly, that your day is longer than it actually is, and responding with full biological compliance. But here is where the numbers become genuinely unpleasant. A study published in JAMA Network Open in March 2025, drawing on data from 122,058 participants collected through the American Cancer Society, found that people who use screens before bed recorded a 33% higher rate of poor sleep quality and slept approximately 50 minutes less per week. 50 minutes a week sounds like something you can absorb until you run it forward across a full year, at which point it becomes more than 43 hours of lost sleep, which is more than a full working week, gone not because of stress or illness, but because of scrolling for 20 minutes before closing your eyes. A meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Psychiatry in November 2025, the most recent large-scale review of the available evidence, analyzed cohort studies across every age group and found the same result regardless of whether the subjects were children, teenagers, or adults. Longer screen time consistently predicted shorter sleep duration and increased risk of insomnia, not correlated in one age group or observed in one region, but consistent across all of them. Each additional hour of screen use after going to bed carried a 59% higher chance of insomnia symptoms, with students sleeping an average of 24 minutes less for every extra hour of screen time logged. Now, most coverage of this topic stops here and leaves you with a problem, but no real architecture for understanding why it is so persistent. The question is not just what is happening. The question is why this particular damage is so difficult to reverse, and why the population is getting worse at sleeping despite years of public awareness campaigns, blue light filter products, and sleep hygiene advice circulating at scale. Here is what rarely gets explained clearly. You cannot decide to override your suprachiasmatic nucleus, known as the SCN. It operates outside voluntary control, the way your heartbeat does. You cannot choose to produce melatonin the way you can choose to slow your breathing. The circadian system is autonomous. It responds to inputs, specifically light inputs, and it responds correctly according to the signals it receives. Feed it blue light at 10 p.m. and it does exactly what it was built to do: suppress melatonin, raise alertness, and keep you running. The system is not broken. It is working perfectly in response to conditions that did not exist in nature until very recently. Fire, the warmest and most red, shifted light source available to humans at night for most of history, posed essentially no circadian disruption. Light-emitting diode backlighting was not part of that equation, and that distinction matters because it means the damage being done is not a malfunction. It is a feature activating at the wrong time. Back in 2013, the average person spent 1 hour and 38 minutes per day on mobile screens. By 2024, that figure had reached approximately 3 hours and 46 minutes, which represents a 130% increase across a single decade. And that is mobile alone, not total screen time across all devices. The suprachiasmatic nucleus that was already being stressed by televisions and laptops is now being targeted by a device that travels everywhere with you, lives in your bedroom, and emits the same disruptive wavelengths that a large monitor does. The exposure window has not widened slightly, it has more than doubled. What does not make it into most consumer coverage is this: light can suppress melatonin even when delivered through closed eyelids during sleep. The photosensitive cells responsible for circadian signaling remain active even when your eyes are shut, according to research from the NIH. The television you fell asleep in front of is not doing nothing. It is still transmitting a signal, and your brain is still receiving it. The economic picture that surrounds all of this is difficult to fully absorb. The Rand Corporation estimated in 2016, and this figure has not been formally updated since, that sleep deprivation costs the United States between $280 and $411 billion per year, representing roughly 2.28% of gross domestic product. That number covers healthcare burden, productivity loss, and reduced cognitive output across the working population. It does not cover the cost of melatonin supplements, sleep tracking subscriptions, or blue light filtering glasses that a 2025 systematic review found have inconsistent evidence supporting their effectiveness on objective sleep outcomes. The market identified that a problem existed, monetized the problem with considerable efficiency, and left the question of whether it solved the problem as an exercise for the consumer. The mental health data follows a similar pattern. Among teenagers logging 4 or more hours of daily screen time, 27% report anxiety symptoms and nearly 26% report depression symptoms. based on research from 2024 and 2025. Teenagers logging 7 or more hours daily are nearly twice as likely to carry a diagnosis of anxiety or depression, and researchers are careful to note that the direction of causation here is genuinely contested. Adolescents who are already struggling may reach for screens as a form of relief, rather than screens being the sole origin of the struggle. What is not contested is the biological mechanism sitting underneath all of it. Disrupted sleep produces elevated cortisol, reduced emotional regulation, impaired memory consolidation, and lowered prefrontal function. And those outcomes look, diagnostically, very close to anxiety and depression. Whether the screen arrives first or the distress does, the two are now deeply entangled, and separating them in a clinical setting has become increasingly difficult. There is also a demographic gradient that almost never surfaces in mainstream coverage of this issue. Blue light's disruptive effect on melatonin runs stronger in younger people and stronger in men than in older adults and women, according to a 2025 MDPI study, which means the group most likely to be using screens late into the night is also the group whose circadian systems are most vulnerable to exactly the kind of disruption those screens produce. The timing could not be worse arranged if someone had specifically designed it that way. Number 17. Meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. Night mode, the feature that tech companies have positioned as a partial solution, does not resolve this. Shifting the display's color temperature toward warmer tones changes the visual appearance of the screen without removing the disruptive blue wavelengths from its actual spectral output. Research from the American Chemical Society published in 2023 confirmed this directly. The only filtering solutions with a genuine physical mechanism behind them are hardware-based, meaning external glasses or physical screen filters that block the relevant wavelengths at the point of entry rather than adjusting the display's color balance. And as of the most recent systematic review covering those products, evidence for their effectiveness on objective sleep metrics remains inconsistent. The fix being marketed is not reliably fixing the thing it claims to fix. What the practical picture looks like, stripped of product recommendations and behavioral frameworks, is this. The only interventions with consistent evidence behind them are the oldest and least marketable ones. Reduce screen use in the 2 hours before bed. Increase exposure to bright light in the morning to anchor your circadian rhythm, and keep your sleeping environment dark. These cost nothing. They are also, in a world where screen time increased by 130% in a decade, and the average person interacts with their phone more than 90 times a day, genuinely difficult to sustain across weeks and months rather than days. Some researchers are working on what they describe as human-centric LED technology, systems that can shift their spectral output depending on the time of day, promoting alertness in the morning and supporting melatonin production in the evening. A team at the American Chemical Society was developing this approach as of late 2023, and the concept represents exactly the kind of solution that closes the gap between what circadian biology requires and what screens currently deliver. As of 2025, no commercially deployed version of this technology exists. It remains in the gap between what is technically achievable and what is available to the person sitting in bed at 11 p.m., deciding whether to put the phone down or watch one more episode of something familiar. That gap between what researchers understand about how the circadian system works and what our devices actually do to it is where most of us are living right now. Not out of ignorance, but out of the specific difficulty of changing behavior when the object disrupting your sleep is also your alarm clock, your calendar, your connection to everyone you know, and the thing you use to wind down at the end of the day. Recommending that people simply use it less is entirely reasonable, and it has a very poor track record. The suprachiasmatic nucleus does not weigh any of that. It reads the light coming in, responds to what the light tells it, and produces exactly the biology that signal calls for. Right now, for a significant portion of the population, the light is saying it is noon, and the biology is responding accordingly every night on schedule with complete reliability. If the space between what our technology promises and what our biology can actually absorb is territory you want to keep tracking, this channel covers exactly that ground. Stay subscribed, because the next story in this space is already in research.